This video is over the basics of geometry vocabulary. You're going to notice that we have terms, and we're going to practice defining them today, looking at them in pictures, and talking about ways to name them. These terms are really vital as you move through your geometry course next year, to know, to understand, and to know how to name them. The biggest thing we struggle with is how to actually name the items and the terms that we're looking at. So we're going to practice that today. What I'd like you to do before we begin is on this paper that I've got in front of me, and this is available to you on Canvas, and if you can't print it, it's okay. You can just write it on paper. The terms point, line, and plane I'd like you to star. And the reason for that is because in geometry, those are known as the undefined terms of geometry. And this doesn't mean they don't have a formal definition, per se. It just means that they're considered so basic in geometry that we know that the definitions for these are true without having to prove that they are true. What these three terms basically do is they create the building blocks for every other word and theorem and postulate that you're going to learn about in geometry that helps define the subject, essentially. So let's move forward with our definitions. Our first one here we have is a point. So a point, again, that's one of those undefined terms in geometry. And what it does is it names a location and it has no size. So a way to define or the way to name a point would just be writing point P. If you were writing it out as a statement or if you were writing it out in a proof or in a sentence, you would just write point P. Our next one is line. A line, that's one of our undefined terms as well in geometry. A line is a straight path that has no thickness and extends on forever. A line is also made up of an infinite number of points. Remember, a line is just a bunch of points really, really close together, an infinite number of them to make up that line. A good way to tell if something is a line has to go with that extending forever part of our vocabulary word. You're going to see some arrows on both ends of our line to indicate that it is a line. So here there's two different ways we could name this line. We could name this line, line AB. And when you name something, or when you name a line based off of points on it, you have to use 2 points to name the line. So here we would call the line AB. How we'd write that symbolically is this symbol up top, which indicates a line, and AB underneath it. Make sure you always put your arrows to indicate that it's a line and not a line segment, which we'll get to next. You can also name lines after the letter that's associated with it on either end. So in this case, we could also call this line L because of that L that's listed at the end of one of the arrows. Our next word is segment or leg. You can interchange those as you wish. A line segment is a part of a line consisting of 2 endpoints and all the points in between them. So this is just a piece of a line, a segment of a line. And the way you name a line segment, again, is using those 2 endpoints and a little bit different word from before, or different symbol from before. So you would name this segment CD, or you could say DC, it wouldn't matter. And how you'd write it is with a little segment above it, no arrows, no dots, just like that. That indicates segment CD or segment DC in this case. So with line segments, it's important to not include the arrows there. If you drew arrows, that would indicate it would be line CD. Our next word is ray. A ray is a part of a line that starts at an endpoint and extends on forever in one direction. In this case, our one direction would be this way. It looks like to the right in this case, because we see that arrow that's there. Now, when you name a ray, it's important to name the ray a certain way. You have to name the ray as the endpoint first. So in this case, we would name this ray PQ, because P is our endpoint. Q is the point that's on the ray extending in whatever direction. How you would write this is PQ and the ray symbol, which is just an arrow essentially on top. Notice how that differs from the line, which has 2 arrows on the sides, or a segment, which has no arrows on the sides. Our next one is a plane. That's our third and final undefined term in geometry. It's a flat surface that has no thickness and extends on forever. So you can think about the coordinate plane when we talk about graphing points. Those are planes. The coordinate plane has an X and a Y plane that we can use to plot points on. So you can name planes in a lot of different ways. You can name this as plane R if you would like to. Plane R, because we have that R symbol that's on there. That R is kind of naming the plane. You could also name the plane XYZ if you would like to, including the points on there as well. Our next one is angle, and this is probably one of the most missed naming of the geometry terms. So this one, an angle, the definition is a figure formed by 2 rays with a common endpoint. The common endpoint is called the vertex. So if we look at this particular picture, our common endpoint is K. That would be our vertex. Now the 2 rays that have that common endpoint would be ray KJ and ray KL. So there's a few different ways to name this angle. We could say that this is angle LKJ, and how we would write that is our angle symbol, which kind of looks like a tilted L, LKJ. Some people write a little line through it like this, LKJ, like that. They draw a little like arc symbol through there as well. That's how I was taught. Sometimes you'll see that in books and practice problems. Or you can name this angle JKL, which in this case we would write as JKL or angle JKL. Now notice that both times when we name this angle, we see that K is in the middle. And that's important because K, when it's in the middle, that means we're acknowledging K is the vertex. So we couldn't name this angle JLK. JLK would be this angle right here, JLK, this one right here. So it's important your vertex is in the middle of whatever you're naming. Our next word is parallel lines. Parallel lines are lines that are in the same plane, which again, we just learned what that meant, that do not intersect. So these 2 lines are parallel, line R and line S. Notice that's the only way we'd be able to name these 2 lines because we don't see any points on them. I know they're parallel lines because these symbols right here in red mean parallel lines. If you do not see those symbols, you cannot assume they're parallel lines. So how we would write this out is we would say line R is parallel to line S. This symbol right here implies parallel lines. Our next vocabulary word is perpendicular lines. These are lines that intersect at 90-degree angles. If you notice, right here we have a 90-degree angle symbol. And if you don't see that, you cannot guarantee the 2 lines are parallel, or perpendicular, excuse me. Now, in this case, we have line AB and ray LN. So those can still be considered perpendicular. If this were to extend on this direction, which I'm going to actually have us do, if this extends this direction, we could say it would be line NL, which we're going to use. So how we would name this is line AB is perpendicular, that's the sign for perpendicular, line NL. And then symbolically, line AB is perpendicular to line NL. Our next word is collinear. Collinear are points that lie on the same line. So for this example, K, L, and M are considered collinear because they all lie on the same line. There's a few different ways we could name this line, actually. We could name this line KL, line LM, or line KM. Remember, you only name a line with 2 points. Our next word here is coplanar. Coplanar are points that lie in the same plane. So for instance, coplanar, A, B, and C are coplanar because they lie in the same plane. Now we could name this plane Plane A, Plane B, Plane C, or Plane ABC.